everyone has rock bottom moments. Like when you realize that milk you swigged from the fridge at midnight last night. Oh no, that wasn't semi-skimmed Cravendale. Oh no, that was your dad's breast milk. Don't ask. Hello, I am the Irish Guy, and today I'm going to find every Premier League club and look at your team's rock bottom moment this season. A moment which never felt worse for the fans. Right, let's go. Arsenal, FA Cup exit to Man United. Look, there's been a few rock bottom moments for Arsenal this season. Come on, it's a season with zero silverware to show for it. And yes, the Champions League semi-final defeat to PSG will have hurt, absolutely. But a rock bottom moment to what? Lose 3-1 in aggregate in a Champions League semi-final against an utterly world-class team? You really think that is a rock-bottom moment? Mate, these Arsenal fans have seen their team concede 8 in a Premier League match. Sure, those games will have hurt, but do you think Arsenal fans were embarrassed on the flight home from Paris? Do you think their pride was so hurt that they were too ashamed to look the aerostess in the eye and ask for a pie and a Sprite? No. What was utterly shameful, though, was crashing out of the FA Cup in the third round at home to the worst Manchester United side in living memory, who played the final hour with just 10 men on the pitch. Oh yeah, and the Gunners missed a penalty in normal time before bottling the penalty shootout. Even when Man United had their sub-goalie in net, someone deemed to be a worse footballer than Onana? Oh, that must have felt grim. I mean, come on, they'd just been embarrassed by Newcastle in the League Cup semi-final the previous month. This was your chance to put some silverware on the board, and no, you were dumbed out by an ugly, pig-rotten football team. That was embarrassing. That was a cup exit where, yeah, the Arsenal fans probably spent that night screaming at a tin of baked beans. They'd have been furious, and rightly so, because the Gunners are in the middle of a trophy drought right now, and yeah, they massively slipped on a banana skin in a match where the only way Raheem Sterling could have frustrated the home fans more is if he personally snuck into their bedrooms to steal their tooth fairy money. Aston Villa FA Cup semi-final. I was pretty sure that Aston Villa were going to win the FA Cup this season. Come on, it had massively opened up for them. They were in an extremely winnable FA Cup semi-final against Crystal Palace. Considering Villa have a manager who's won more cup finals than I've had yogurts in my life, then absolutely without a shadow of a doubt, those fans must have felt they had their name on the cup, and they are probably going to fry a stale Man City for tea in the final, getting revenge for their League Cup final loss in 2020. To lose 3-0 instead, getting roasted by Eze and Zar, with the Villa players freezing in front of 80,000 at Wembley. I'm sorry, but if I was a Villa fan, then yeah, I would have spent that afternoon choking on toilet paper. How do you beat both Bayern Munich and PSG, and yet splutter like food-poisoned frogs against mid-table sides? Hideous. Bournemouth losing at home to Ipswich. Bournemouth have fell off the map in the second half of the season. I am disappointed. When they absolutely grilled Nottingham Forest 5-0 in January, they had gone 11 Premier League games unbeaten. They were mini invincibles. I thought for sure Andoni Iraola was gonna cruise his players into Europe. But no, he then gets linked to the Real Madrid job, which clearly must have had him doing sloppy poos in private. He must be nervously quaking with fear when brushing his teeth. He probably had the Bernabeu on the brain, and was, yeah, probably instructing someone to send Xabi Alonso evil prank calls. And as a result of Iraola daydreaming about lifting the Club World Cup in June, then yeah, Bournemouth fell apart. And losing home to Ipswich Town at the start of April, that was the Cherries' 4th defeat in 5 matches, and it all but smeared their European ambitions across wet toast. Real shame. Brentford FA Cup exit. Let's be real. They haven't made too many rock bottom lows for Brentford. Come on. It's Brentford. How exactly can you spoil their season when they're actually hunting down European football even without Ivan Toney? But if I had to pick one, maybe losing in the FA Cup third round at home to Plymouth, a team who recently had Wayne Rooney at the wheel. Honestly, the new Plymouth boss is probably still wiping donut stains off his desk. But yeah, that cup exit was probably rough. Brighton 7-0 defeat. 7-0. 7-0. Actual 7-0. 7. Nottingham Forest are having a great season, but 7? Imagine those poor Brighton fans having to sit on their 4-hour bus ride to the beach. I'd imagine it would be a bit like coming home from your dog's funeral. How do you lose by 7 goals against Nottingham Forest? To make it even worse, you were literally watching a former Brighton employee slapping in a hat-trick for fun, and oh yeah, Chris Wood celebrated. 3 times. For Brighton fans, that must have been about as much fun as eating an Xbox. Chelsea losing to Ipswich. The worst moment for Chelsea could be yet to come, especially if they actually lose their joke Euro final. The Conference League trophy has practically had the word Chelsea scribbled on it since August. So can you imagine if Anthony scores a winning goal for Real Betis? It would be so embarrassing for Chelsea fans. A bit like being halfway through ordering your hot chocolate at Costa Coffee before you realize you're not wearing any pants. No wonder the old ladies at the back are throwing their blueberry muffins at you. But look, the absolute worst moment, hands down, losing to Ipswich after Christmas. I still don't have a clue how that happened. Ipswich Town are dreadful, and yes, 2-0. How? It was a game so bad, I think it actually systematically ended the Chelsea careers of 3 blokes who started that day. João Felix, Christopher Nkunku, and Axel Disasi. Utterly terrible, and yeah, to really polish it off as the rock bottom moment, it's that Amari Hutchinson scored. Your talented ex-academy winger who you signed in 2008. That's gotta taste like cow cheese. Crystal Palace conceding 10 goals in 4 days. Look, I'm tempted to go back to Crystal Palace's horror Christmas, where they let a criminally underperforming and shot of confidence Gabriel Jesus stick 5 goals in their net. Yeah, 5. But no, I actually think Palace's worst moment came a month ago. 2-0 up at the Etihad, they lose 5-2. 4 days later, they're 4-0 down at half-time at St. James's Park after Ebereki Eze conjured up one of the worst penalties in Premier League history. I would imagine the mood in that change room at half-time would have been awful. That was 9 goals conceded in what? An hour and a half? Everton, the Bournemouth mess. This is arguably the biggest rock-bottom moment for Everton in Premier League history. Seriously, you can't forget how grisly this was. This was the must not get relegated season for Everton Football Club. They could not suffer relegation in their final ever season at Goodison Park. They couldn't be opening up their new spaceship ground to play against Wrexham in August. No, just no. And yet after this game, they were rock bottom of the league and looked favourites for the drop. They'd lost their first 2 matches, 3-0 to Brighton and 4-0 to Spurs. They're then 2-0 up at home to Bournemouth with just 3 minutes left on the clock. Antoine Semenyo scores in 87 minutes. Lewis Cook scores in injury time, and there's even time for Luis Sinisterra to pop in a 96th minute winner. I can't imagine how disastrous that night must have felt for Everton fans. I actually think most Toffee supporters coming out of that ground would have accepted relegation on the spot. We 2-0 up and lose whilst playing hideous Sean Dyche football, a style of play that's about as pretty as a goat in a skirt. Oh, that would have been rough. Fulham, FA Cup quarter-final. Fulham's season ended in March. I still don't think they're over this. Again, Fulham had just knocked Man United out of the FA Cup at Old Trafford. They're then given a home quarter-final against Crystal Palace, and just like Aston Villa, they lose 3-0 in what was a shambles of a Fulham display. I would say this one definitely hurt. Ipswich losing to Southampton. It shows how bad Ipswich would be that I'm not actually including the match. They lost 6-0 at home, because I think their next home match was even worse. All Ipswich needed to do was beat terrible bottom club Southampton at home in February, and they would go level on 6 points with 17th placed Wolves. Nope, they unforgivably lose to a pathetic team only had 6 points on the board. Sorry, but that match alone relegated Ipswich. It knocked the stuffing out of the club. Leicester, 9 home games without a goal. Yeah, this was definitely the biggest rock bottom moment for Leicester in Premier League history. For a club who experienced the greatest of highs, this was undoubtedly the footballing overlords paying them back with some of the most terrible punishment. 9 home games in a row without a goal. Literally none scored at this ground between December and May. That was absolute wet vomit. And yeah, that 9th home game against Liverpool, to be fair, it was actually a spirited display, even though there were no goals. But the previous one, where Leicester were 2-0 down at home to Newcastle after just 11 minutes. One of the worst Premier League displays I've ever seen. Fabian Schär nearly scores from halfway. And seeing old boy Harvey Barnes poking a goal and then take absolute pity upon his former fans. It's so embarrassing. This has been a horrendously garbage season for Leicester. Words can't really sum up how dreadful 9 home games without a goal actually is. Liverpool, the Carabao Cup final. You might think that crashing out of PSG in the Champions League is a rock bottom moment. No. It wasn't a final. Liverpool literally lost out on a trophy by losing the League Cup final just 5 days after crashing out of the Champions League. Sorry, but at the start of March, there was talk of a treble. There was quadruple chatter at Christmas. No, Newcastle blowing Liverpool off the Wembley turf, ultimately dominating them in that final. That must have stung. The Reds hadn't actually lost a domestic cup final in 9 years. They've gotten pretty good at winning at Wembley, so that fabulous, fantastic match. Oh, those Liverpool fans, I'm sure for them, to be bullied by Burn, that must have felt like an afternoon of eating sheep fingers. Man City, 4-0 versus Spurs. Maybe losing 5-1 at Arsenal will have stung the worst. Christ, but Miles Lewis getting mocking Haaland's celebration. The humble song being blared on tannoys after the match. Yeah, I'm sure that would have been a rough afternoon. And one of the worst rock bottom moments in the entire Pep era. Getting humbled by his former assistant. But still, I think this one was worse. This is the worst Tottenham team I've ever seen. They are on course to finish 17th in the league. They have shown a complete lack of backbone, spine, ability, accountability, will to win. And yet before Christmas, they left Man City with a 4-0 win. I don't think a team has ever finished 17th in the Premier League after winning 4-0 at the reigning Premier League champs. This is one of those results where you sort of think, did that actually happen? But yeah, you were embarrassingly cooked by Maddison on his birthday for a 5th straight defeat in a row. And this was the game which fully extinguished City from the title race. It opened up the gap to 8 points, and yeah, it was a truly horrendous result. How do you lose 4-0 at home to a team who are lucky not to get relegated? Man United losing the Europa League final. Disgrace. What was that? Seriously, this is Manchester United in a final. This is Manchester United in a European final. But to now see them wilting like cowards in a European final against Spurs? Spurs? And not just any Spurs, no. A Spurs sitting 4th bottom of the league. I have seen some horrible Tottenham teams in my day. This one is by far the worst. And Manchester United, who are being coached by someone who last summer was seen as Jurgen Klopp's heir. Somebody who was held up as a European genius after annihilating Pep in the Champions League. Oh, no. He gets beaten down by a terrible Spurs. As this is not the first time Manchester United faced Ange Postecoglou in a big international competition. I don't know, he was coaching against them at the Club World Cup 25 years ago as boss of South Melbourne, where half the players had probably come straight from a barbecue. To think he would one day be beating Manchester United in a European final, and with Tottenham, it gets worse. This is the worst Tottenham side of my lifetime, and still, they have beaten Manchester United not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times this season. Lads, it's Tottenham. It's supposed to be a 3-word team talk to show how little this club actually care for the threat of Spurs. And you're telling me you've lost to them 4 times in a row? You haven't beaten Spurs in your last 7 meetings with them. And you've lost a European final, a get out of jail free card, a ticket back to the Champions League without laying a glove on Spurs. I mean, the Tottenham boss was literally being called a clown before the match, and yet still, this defeat not only robs you of a trophy, but it means it really is. This season is just you finishing bottom 5 of the Premier League with no Champions League to show for it. To me, this is an absolute disgrace to let Tottenham nick a trophy from you. A Tottenham team would be beaten by both Ipswich and Leicester at home. A Tottenham team who've lost 25 matches this season. Not even Tamworth lost to this Tottenham team inside 90 minutes. I mean, do you know how many goals Spurs have conceded this season? 85 in all competitions. Southampton have let in 93, and yet Manchester United still couldn't stick one past them. This was Spurs' 3rd clean sheet against them this season. Pathetic! Another one. Ah! Come on, then! I've still got like 40 odd left. Newcastle conceding 4 at Brentford. This has been an incredible season for Newcastle United. Utterly magical. Champions League qualification and a piece of silverware. It's actually a season of utter dreams. The best Magpie season I've ever watched. It's been absolutely glorious. Isn't it mad to think there were so angry Newcastle fans who wanted Eddie Howe sacked at Christmas? Seriously, there was a lot of noise from angry Geordies that they wanted to cue the leady chucked in the big fat bin. Yes, true, Brian, we're looking at you. Losing 4-2 at Brentford in December was the rock bottom low. A shambolically defensive performance which enraged Howe. It left the club winless in 4 and sitting 12th. I mean, forget about Champions League football. That looked dead in a ditch. Oh no, back then, Newcastle fans would snatch your hand off for Europa League. To put it in context, after that weekend in December, only 1 point separated Newcastle and Manchester United in the league. Newcastle were lower in the table than Spurs. Yeah, they're now separated by like 30 points. The Magpies really could have fallen off a cliff and had a full-on Tottenham meltdown and collapse, which would have left Howe absolutely sacked and with somebody horrifying like Graham Potter at the wheel. Disgusting. So yeah, that winter United B-land was rough. Nottingham Forest 2-2 versus Leicester. Well, this is the match where everybody accepted Nottingham Forest are not getting Champions League football, right? Sure, getting slapped 5-0 by Bournemouth in January was a bad afternoon, but rock bottom? No, because Forest had just won 7 of the previous 8 matches and still sat 3rd in the league. Nobody was freaking out. It was just an off day, but this result, slumping Forest all the way down to 7th. The lowest position they'd been in since early December. And oh yeah, they had to watch their crazy owner break their beloved manager on the pitch. Like a teacher yelling at a schoolboy in front of the class. Just a miserable afternoon. Southampton 5-0 down at halftime. There's so many I could choose from. Well, come on, being 5-0 down at halftime to Spurs, meaning manager Russell Martin was literally sacked at halftime. That was hideous. Especially considering that by May, Southampton are only 1 point above being the worst ever Premier League team. And yet this Spurs team, who destroyed them in 1 half on their own turf. Oh, no. Tottenham are still only 3 places above this horrific Southampton team. But really, that's made this 5-0 age even worse. Spurs are a bad team too. So 5-0 at halftime? Explain yourselves. Tottenham losing home to Leicester. There's been so many truly dreadful moments. But the 2-1 defeat at home to Leicester in January was truly wet garbage. It meant Spurs had now lost 4 league games in a row. They were winless in 7, and yeah, they had Jamie Vardy scoring against them and mocking their club by reminding them he's won more Premier League titles than them. All in all, just miserable. West Ham 5-0 versus Liverpool. There's been a lot of bad ones, but yeah, probably losing 5-0 at home to Liverpool. Your final game of 2024, that looked pretty pathetic. And still, Julian Lopetegui was not immediately sacked. That was an absolute bananas match. All those exciting summer signings, yet you get cooked 5-0 at home? Shambolic. It reminded me of the Pellegrini days. Wolves, bottom after 10 games. It's absolutely mental to think, considering this Premier League season has produced two of the worst teams in the history of the division. It feels like Southampton especially been chained to the bottom ever since the first ball was kicked. They've been scrambling to beat Derby County's horrific 11 points, whilst Leicester recently went half a year without a goal. Wolves, by contrast, are an exciting little squad who just won 6 matches on the bounce. They're comfy mid-table with a bunch of Brazilian and Portuguese ballers. They are above both Europa League finalists in the league, so it's all the more crazy to think they were bottom of the table after 10 matches. Yeah, not Southampton, not Leicester, but Wolves, after more than a quarter of the season. Yeah, bottom without a win, and yet for some reason, you all seem to love Gary O'Neill. Why? Seriously, I've never understood it. Why? He had this bunch of talented little ballers. Bottom. This side are clearly capable of winning 6 Premier League matches in a row, and yet he had them underperforming and playing like blind pandas. What? Anyway, that's the end of the video. Let me know in the comments what do you think. Let me know what was the worst one. Let me know in the comments. If you do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.